I got rid of all of your stuff because you decided to go home without telling me. When I returned from caring for my mother back home, these shocking words were thrown at me by my husband. A quick look around the house confirmed that none of my personal belongings were anywhere in sight. Why would you do such a thing? You left me here all alone to go back home. It's your fault for not listening to me. With that, my husband flung the newspaper he was reading at me. I let out a heavy sigh at his childish behavior. My name is Lucy. I am due to retire at the age of 65 this year, but have accepted an offer to continue working till I'm 70. My husband Joshua and I were introduced by mutual friends. We married 2 years ago. Both of us had been previously divorced and we didn't have any children together. Living as a couple in our late 50s turned out to be more exciting than we'd anticipated, despite our busy work lives. However, ever since my husband retired a year ago and started staying at home, his attitude towards me has slowly changed. From the start of our marriage, he has been somewhat dominant at home. Constant complaints and snide remarks about my housekeeping have worn me down emotionally. As we were newlyweds, I was concerned about our lives in old age. Divorce wasn't an option back then, no matter how tough things got. Well, dinner? I haven't seen someone in such a long time, I'm definitely going. I received a call on my cell phone from a friend from college, inviting me for a meal after not seeing each other for several years. We were all so busy that we hardly had the chance to get together, so I immediately accepted the invitation. We agreed to have lunch together the following Sunday. I was looking forward to meeting my old friends and worked hard to make it that day. To make sure I arrived in time for our meeting, I left the house. While my husband, who usually sleeps until noon since his retirement, was still asleep, I left a handwritten note before heading out. Sorry to keep you waiting, you're all early. I planned to arrive 15 minutes early, but my friends were already there. We just got too excited and arrived too early. Today, 2 of my high school friends, who also attended the same college with me, were joining. We've been the best of friends. As our chatter was blooming, it was time for our reservation, so we headed to the restaurant. It was a casual and welcoming place. Since I was always busy with work, I rarely had the opportunity to visit places like this, which made me very happy. I haven't been to a place like this since my youth. You're exaggerating. Let's come here as many times as you want after you retire. But you extended for 5 more years, right? People who can work are different. We don't have to wait until I retire. We're going to have lots of fun from now on. Various dishes were served, and we savored them. We reminisced about our student days and discussed our thoughts at our current age, having a wonderful time. It's been a long time since I laughed this much. I haven't had a restful moment at work or at home for a while. As I thought about this, a hurried sound of door opening and a panicked voice from the restaurant staff caught my attention. Wait, isn't that man Lucy's husband? You're right. He's coming this way. What? No way. Hearing my friend's words and looking towards the commotion, I found my husband with a devilish look on his face heading towards us. I instinctively looked away, but the next moment all the dishes on the table were knocked to the floor by my husband. The sound of the plate shattering echoed throughout. In the middle of the uproar in the restaurant, the first to speak was my husband. Why did you go out without preparing my meal? What? What are you talking about? You always manage to eat without me making anything. I'm talking about today, and you're wasting money in a place like this. It's my money I earned, and I'm free to spend it how I want, right? Shut up. You don't talk back to me. You'll lose your income when you retire at 70. I'm telling you to save it. My husband's absurd argument made me raise my voice, but realizing this was a public place, I recoiled and made myself small. Not only my friends, but also the other customers and staff were taken aback and were staring at us. Feeling embarrassed and angry, my face turned red. Then one of my friends stood up. Why are you here all of a sudden? We're just friends gathering for a meal. As a husband, I think you should understand that much. That's right. Just because you're married doesn't mean you have the right to control her, they said, glaring at him. Relieved at my friend's support, I looked at my husband. It was evident that he was trembling with rage. Apparently, he was so angry that he did something unthinkable. He took water from the next table and splashed it at my 2 friends. Ah! Hey, what are you doing? I stood rigid, aghast at what had just happened, merely watching my drenched friends. It's because of people like you who take her out that her housework gets neglected. With that, my husband yanked my hand and dragged me out of the restaurant. All the while, the restaurant was buzzing with commotion, and I could not bring myself to raise my voice. Days later, I called my friends to apologize. I'm truly sorry.
It's not your fault, Lucy. It's clearly your husband who's in the wrong. To be frank, you should leave him. You'll be constrained in everything you do from now on.
My friend said this with an awkward look, but I also thought that I needed to rethink my relationship with my husband after this incident. Joshua has changed, but I can't bring myself to cut ties. Even though I knew in my head that I needed to leave, I was already emotionally attached to my husband after just a few years together. But, as if to mock my feelings, my husband took an outrageous action again. Given the recent incident, I figured I wouldn't be able to go out without telling my husband anymore, so I decided to go shopping with him. Do you have any plans today, dear? I'm retired now, so of course I don't. Are you making fun of me? No, that's not it. I was thinking of going shopping. Would you like to come with me? I guess I have no choice. We headed to the shopping center, where we could find anything we needed. Even while driving, my husband looked sullen and seemed to be in a bad mood. We're here. We're here. What did you come to buy? I came to buy my mom's pajamas and such today. The ones she's wearing now have gotten old. When I answered this way, my husband let out a heavy sigh. Why do I have to shop for your mother? He ended up not even getting out of the car. I had no choice but to shop alone. When I quickly returned to the parking lot, not only the car, but also my husband was gone. Thinking it was strange, I called my husband multiple times, but he didn't answer. Could it be he went home first? I searched around for a while, but I couldn't find my husband in the end. Since I didn't have money for a taxi fare, I ended up walking home. It was a 1-hour walk carrying bags. Being nearly 60 years old and lacking in regular exercise, I had to take several breaks and eventually arrived home in 2 hours. When I got home, my husband was laughing heartily while watching TV and drinking beer. When he noticed my return, he looked at the exhausted me and laughed again as if mocking me. How many hours did it take you to get back? That's because you left me there. Why would you go home all of a sudden? Your shopping isn't my concern. Now hurry up and make dinner. He said, then he leaned back on the sofa and turned his attention back to the television. I'm not done talking. Even when I shouted at him, he ignored me. Being repeatedly subjected to my husband's selfishness, my frustration reached a boiling point. At this time, when I was feeling mentally drained, I received a call from my mother's home care nurse informing me that my mother had fractured a bone. My 87-year-old mother had been living alone since my father passed away, and usually as a helper to assist with daily life. Apparently, she had accidentally tripped over the entrance's step, and I was told she would need constant care for a while. You see, my mom fractured a bone and needs care. I'm going. Hey, wait, what about my dinner? And besides, she should be fine on her own with just a fracture. What are you saying? My mother is elderly. If we leave her as she is, she won't be able to walk or eat on her own. As I argued back against my husband's selfish remarks and prepared to go to my parents' home, he said something unbelievable. If we leave her alone, won't someone from the other side come to pick her up? Then we wouldn't have to deal with her anymore, right? He smirked as if enjoying my reaction. You're despicable. Ignoring him, I stormed out of the house. I could hear unbearable insults being thrown at me from behind, but they no longer reached my ears. I had been holding back, but after hearing him talk about my mother in such a way, something inside me exploded. At that moment, I decided to take revenge. For a week, I stayed at my parents' home to take care of my mother. As expected, my phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from my husband, but I ignored them all. While concentrating on my mother's care, I couldn't help worrying about my future life. I could continue working until I'm 70, so I can work for another 5 years. However, I was prepared to quit my job for my mother. Knowing that just thinking won't help, I decided to return home once to discuss the future with my husband. When I arrived home, the front door was unlocked and my husband was sitting on the living room sofa with his arms crossed. I'm back! I hesitantly called out to him, and the words that came out of his mouth were unbelievable. I threw away all your belongings because you went to your parents' house without permission. What? In a panic, I looked around the house. Indeed, all my personal belongings had vanished. My clothes from my wardrobe, my cosmetics from the bathroom, everything. The album with precious memories of my mother seemed to have been discarded as well. Why would you do such a thing? Where did you throw them? Give them back. What's with the attitude? If you can't listen to me, then get out. What? Whether it was because I was being defiant, he was irritated and hit the table. Seriously, you incorrigible man. I wonder if my mom had seen through your character. Having lost the energy to even get angry, I sighed heavily and looked down at my seated husband. Our marriage certificate. Huh? What are you talking about? Our marriage certificate. My husband, who hadn't expected to hear that, widened his eyes in surprise. We didn't submit it, right? Us? In fact, my mother was strongly opposed to my marriage to him. Looking back, I wondered if she had sensed something about my husband back then. She adamantly refused to permit our marriage. There were also circumstances at work where it were more convenient for me to keep my maiden name, so we had discussed waiting until each of us retired to submit the marriage certificate. We were in common law marriage. So we're not legally husband and wife? That's right. We even had separate insurance cards. and I had been left to handle all official documents. You must have completely forgotten about the existence of the marriage certificate, so you threw it away, didn't you? I coldly stated this, staring at my husband, still seated on the sofa. Since we haven't submitted the marriage certificate, we're not legally a couple. Plus, I built this house before we got married. Wait, you can't be serious. Indeed, I am serious. The one who needs to leave is you, Joshua. I can't live with someone as horrible as you. Wait, hold on. You've changed since you retired, Joshua. If it was just the nasty things you did to me, I could still forgive you, but it's unacceptable for you to badmouth my friends and mother. Wait, I was just jealous. You can still work while I can't. And you even said that you can work for another 5 years with re-employment. I was planning to work in the same department even after my retirement. But the company told me to move to an insignificant department. I couldn't swallow my pride. When I refused, they simply cut me off at the age of 65. As he said this, he hung his head and glanced sideways at me. He probably expected me to gently encourage him, as I used to do in such times. But none of that matters now. I went to the kitchen to get a garbage bag, and just as my husband had done with my belongings, I began to throw his things into it, one after another. I delivered the final blow to my husband, who was stunned by the scene. You seem to be relying on my income and savings after your retirement. But since we're not a couple, I want you to leave this house. You'll have to get by on your own from now on. Wait, I apologize for everything, so please don't kick me out. It's too late for regrets now. Goodbye. And so I managed to take my revenge, and my husband became free. After that, my husband lost his place to live, and as he was wasteful with money, his savings are almost zero, so he's living a very poor life. Of course, he can't make a living on pension alone, and given his high pride, even finding re-employment seems hopeless. He's said to be eking out a living with daily part-time jobs. He's been disliked by his relatives for a long time, so there's no one to help him. This is truly reaping what you sow. On the other hand, I started living with my mother. I was worried about my mother's health, and since her home was getting old, I invited her to live in this house. I managed to balance my work and caregiving with the help of understanding from my workplace and using caregiving services. It's very busy, but I'm living fulfilling and enjoyable days every day.